So it's been a while. I try and want to release something about every week or so, but unfortunately up here in Canada, in my province of Alberta, it decided to try and basically cook us for about a week and a half straight. So it's been very, very warm, and when it's very warm like that, it makes it very challenging to want to be in the shop. And you can see even right now that we're sitting at over, almost 30 degrees in my shop right now, but it's cool enough, even though you can see how warm I am, to be doing some work on the car. And I was hoping to get a little further along, but I was working on this thing and finding more and more odds and things going on. So what I basically did is I decided to sort of take a step back and sort of start looking at the wiring and everything on this. And what I was finding was, this is the connector here for on the firewall down there. And I was finding wires crossed here, there, and everywhere, and you can see like this wire split, and wires are in all sorts of different shape, in all sorts of different ways and means. And I was looking at the wire for the starter, and even the wiring for the starter and all that wasn't in it wasn't in bad shape, but I would like to see it perhaps in better and not so ragged and all torn up and stuff like that. So I basically decided that it was going to be time for me to start looking at doing some wiring on this thing that makes a little more sense. What I did is I picked up this guy here, which is going to be running from which will be running the battery, positive battery into here, and then I'll be running from this over to here. And basically what this will have is there'll be a 150 amp fuse for this, from the battery to this junction block, which will be providing power for all the accessories from the C100 connector over there. And this is 35 amps, I think, if it was 35 amps, something like that. So it'll be 150 amp protection here from the battery to this, and then from here it'll be protected at 35 amps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount that up here. And the circuit breaker, I figure, is going to be mounted back up here on the firewall where it's fairly flat, and then I can just run the cable down along the frame rail and then run up the back to there, and then I can run the wires across and then over to that, so it'll be fairly short. So yeah, so that's kind of what my plans are tonight. So I'm going to get the circuit breaker installed, the fuse holder installed, and then I'll start making some cables. And once I get some cables going, then I'll show you guys what's going on there. So one of the things that I've recently bought was this guy here, which is basically a large ring terminal kit. And then they come out and they look like this. And basically this is for a 4-gauge wire. The other thing that I've recently picked up was I picked up a pair of these guys, which work really good for cutting that big, heavy, thick wire. But the best one that I picked up is this here, and this is that crimp tool, which allows me to do different various sizes. And so this allows me to do crimping of these wires. And so what I'm going to do is I need, so I need 2 of these. Go down here like that. So that's where the wire is going to go. So it's going to go from the battery down to here, and then from here run across, and it's going to connect up over there to the circuit breaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crimp these 2 down. So crimping's pretty simple. See, I got the wire here, so I need to just trim some of that off. So you just hold your lug, find the spot. So I want to cut off about there. Well, not cut, but take the cover off. So I just use my snips, and then I just lightly cut around it. You don't want to put too much pressure on this wire because it is strand. And so being strand wire, it's very easy to cut. So you can see now that I've got that slice. Wire is exposed. Lug, wire, lug on the wire. Crimpers with the lug inserted. And then final. So now what I do is I will then take this and I attach it down to where this is going to be. So it's sitting on there. I'm going to put a nut on this just to kind of cinch it on. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of take a mark so you can see where the cable comes up. Put the cable, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of take a second mark. So made a rough mark so you can see how kind of long it is. So I'll cut just a hair bit more off just to give me a little extra room so you can see how long my cable will be. Grab my big wire cutters and then cut it. And then I'll keep doing this. And eventually what my plan will be, as you can see, I've got one already here connected to my alternator. So the alternator is going to, the alternator will run to the battery. The battery will run to the fuse, and then the fuse will run to the starter. So it's going to run off of here, it's going to come down under here, and then it's going to go down to the starter, which is down in there. And then from there I'll be running it from here, and like I said, up to the circuit breaker. So I'm going to do cut a couple more wires, shrink tube a couple more wires, and then we'll go from there. So I'm not sure if this thing was recording or not, but anyways, I'm going to redo this because I'm not sure if it saved the clip or what happened to the clip. But basically where I'm at now, circuit breaker has the number 4 wire for all wire gauge running from that down across, and it's coming into this terminal down here. I kind of just got it loosely buttoned on there now. You can see there's 2 wires coming off this one. One wire will come up to the battery, which is right here, and then this other one, this guy here, runs along, comes down, it'll be connecting down into the starter. The other one I got is up here on the alternator, so this one here will come down, and just like this other one, it's going to connect to the battery. So there'll be 2 connections on the battery, one from the alternator and one down to the 150 amp fuse. From there, I was working on the C100 connector down here to confirm, to make sure what the wiring was in this car. I was able to get a hold and find a wiring schematic. I had 2 different ones, and one of the reasons I tried to find a different one that was making this a little confusing. So you can see I got the 2 here side by side, and they're identical wiring schematics. But where you find the difference here, and this is what was confusing me, is when you look down over here under this side, you'll see like F5, which says dark green, you know, it comes over and says multi-port fuel injection, tune port injection. But really, if you look back over here, you'll see that F5, which is dark green, is for the coolant temp sensor, and F4, the pink, is for all of this stuff. So it's a little bit confusing using this wiring diagram because of how this stuff is split, where this one here it's properly categorized. So I decided to change over to use this one, and it made things a lot easier. From there, I started doing pinouts and just kind of figuring out what all the wires in this loom are for, and what I may need or what I don't need. What I found was these 2 wires, which is a white and a pink, go to the distributor. One's for tack, one's for power. But you can see here on this one, it's frayed, broken, so it's going to be spliced and soldered. And down here on this guy, it's a little worn on the end, so I want to put a little bit of heat shrink on there just to protect it. So I found those 2. These 2 reds are power for the fuse box and ignition. This group is for the wiper and wiper motor or sprayer. This one here, this brown one, as you can see, is for the oil pressure sender. This pink one, this one goes down, or this, it's technically purple, but it feeds down to the starter. And then this brown one here, it's it feeds over to the alternator for the dash light, to let you know what's going on with this. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to be leaving it here tonight as for a few things. Over here, I need 2 lugs for here that I don't have. Apparently my kit didn't come with the 3/8 for that, and then I need a 3/8 for down there in the starter. So I will continue this in the next day or 2. I got to put the order in for that stuff, and once I get that, then I'll come out and finish working that. The other side of the connector for the C100, I will be putting a bunch of new ring terminals, shortening, splicing, fixing, soldering, whatever it is for that. So that should be in a couple of days. And when I get that, I'll bring you guys back. So one of the issues that I was having while I was doing crimping is this tool that I picked up from Amazon to do these crimps. I'm not sure maybe if I missed the instructions or not quite familiar with it. Basically what would happen is after I cut my wire and I took my lug and I put it together like so, when I use the crimpers, and I don't know if this is a design issue with the crimpers or if it's a design issue with the lugs, you can see that it's crimped. But what I find happens is after you crimp it, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but right here, it makes a very sharp, flat point right here. And what I discovered with these crimpers is the way to fix that is you basically rotate it 90 degrees within the crimp, within the press, and then crimp it again. And then once you've done that, that flat spot is gone and it gives you a nice roundish crimp. And then from there, shrink wrap it or shrink tube it. And once it's done being shrink wrapped, you end up with a nice clean connection. And this one basically becomes the battery, the feed from the battery. So battery, line, and then feeds up to this junction block. And this is the junction block where the one from the starter connects to as well. So the starter comes into this, the battery comes into this, and then from there it'll have 150 amp fuse here, which then feeds out into the main line to feed and support the rest of it. So just a little small side note there for if you ever use these crimpers, you know, what's a good little tip there. It's these particular ones here. They're good, they work. You need to make sure you just double crimp it. So if you pick them up, just keep an eye on that. All right, so as of right now, I have pretty much all my connections made. The only ones that I don't have hooked up right now is starter and alternator because I'm testing the 12-volt system. And so right now you can see that this is the fuse that I have inserted for my junction block here. I got the one cable right down in here at the end of my finger, which powers it from the battery. And I just hooked that one up. And what I found is that connecting between the terminals, 11.9, from negative down to there was 11.9, and the wall was 11.9. So I know now that by hooking up that cable, all my 12-volt connections are good. So where that leaves me now is I need to get power back into the car, and power into the car is fed off of one of these two red wires. I'm not sure which ones, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to crimp them both and put terminals on them, and then we'll see where we're at. They both look to be about the same gauge of wire, so I'm going to assume about a 10 or an 8 gauge wire. So let me get some terminals for that. All right, so I had to find some crimps and stuff, but I got that one made. Put the terminal on it. I got the shrink crimped. I'm not a big fan of these cheap Canadian Tire terminals, but you can make them work pretty good if you got the proper gear and the proper equipment. So I'm just gonna finish crimping up these two, and we can see which one is more. Get the car running. And number 2. So now I've got my 2 ends that are ready to be connected to the junction wall. And we'll be able to see which one allows the ignition to get the car going. So, let's see if the key works. Key is on. So it looks like everything in here is powered on. So I'm not sure what the second one is for. Let's see if it tries to turn over. Yep. So I don't know if I need that second red one or not. So I may only need that one. So I'll leave the other one off for now. And then if I find that it's needed by something, I guess I will put it on. So at this point, I have the main power connected over there. I have the starter connected. I have power to the fuse box for some of it. I've looked at the diagram and it doesn't make, I've tried to understand this diagram, but like one says red goes to power distribution for light switch and fuse block, which is the one that I probably tagged white. And then the other red just says power distribution ignition switch. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. I mean, I guess I can add them both and it's not going to make much of a difference. It's not going to harm anything. So I'll put that one on and we'll see what happens from there. When you hear the nuts fall, hits the floor, you're okay. Same thing with sockets and wrenches. Okay, so now we need to install distributor. Okay, it's set 8 degrees. So now I need to figure out where our rotor is pointing at. See where that's at. That's on I got it on the first try, yay or nay. That would be a big fat nay. So I'm wrapping up this electrical debacle of my car, and I'm mainly doing this because I feel like it's been going down a rabbit hole with this thing. I've spent numerous days, countless hours going over the wiring this, and it's still not at a point that I'm happy with, but what it's at is a point that I can live with. I realize that there's still going to be a lot of wiring that needs to be fixed in this thing. You have to remember this car used to be TPI, and it used to have the throttle body and everything on it, and it had a 305. And when they pulled that out, they put in a carbureted 350, and when you do that, there's all sorts of electrical all over this car. And it even goes down to something as simple as it even goes down to as simple as, you know, when I was under the dash trying to figure out, you can see all this extra wire down here is just crap. And I mean, I found why my battery was going dead, because there was this vibration and impact sensor box. Don't even know the make or brand of it, you know, when it was possibly installed or anything of that nature. So, you know, anytime that I put the battery on this thing, it kept dying and I couldn't figure out why. And even though it's low voltage, it still has an LED on it that was blinking. And I only found that because when I hooked my battery up and I was under my dash, I could see a light and I was like, I don't know what that is. So I gutted that all out, got it all back and going. And so the wiring now, I like I said, I'm okay with. You can see that I redid the plug here for the alternator, did the wiring, redid that. I put a fuse or a circuit breaker back here, which is allowing the connection from here. So this is the battery down to 150 amp fuse down on the bottom. And this side runs to the junction blocks. This side here runs to the starter and up to the alternator. So I'm all good with that. On this side, the wiring is still a bit of a mess down in here. I still got some things to clean up, not as much. I got it all kind of bundled up down there as good as I can. I've got the oil sender working. The plug fit on there, so that was all good. I've got the HEI leads where they should be and everything else. And what's so nice about this now is that when I'm in the actual car, what didn't happen before, and I still got issues in here too. I don't really know what's going on, if it's a gauge issue or what. But when I turn the key on, you can see voltage still works. But for some reason, so now if I crank the car over, what you'll see you can see that it builds oil pressure. So I'm a lot better now with the gauges working, oil pressure is working, battery voltage is working. There's still a few things that aren't working properly, which I'm okay with. I can't get the coolant gauge to work, but it's got the wrong sender on the block. The gauge might be faulty. It's pegged to max no matter what I do. So everything that, you know, there's still work to be done, but I don't want this to be going on forever and ever and ever. I want to do other things in the car. I want to put the small stuff aside for now. So I think for now, the car will run, the car will do what it's supposed to, and once I have everything else working, then I can look into making sure that all the wiring is good. You can see how bad my bench is. It's just, it looks like a bomb went off. So I think I'm gonna leave it here for now. I'll move and do all the other stuff, and when I start another video, I'll work on that. Unfortunately, I'm going camping in 2 weeks, so I got a lot of stuff I gotta do in my truck. I gotta put new shocks on it and stuff like that, so I'll be working on that. I'll probably create some videos on that, but for now, I'm leaving the car and we're moving forward with other stuff on that. So for now, thanks, and if you have any questions or anything like that, let me know and I'll answer as I can. See you next time.